Hello and welcome to a Blood and Pigment Nationality review. I'm Joseph.
I'm Guy.
And I'm Dan.
And today we're looking at the English in Blood and Plunder. In Blood and Plunder, each nation kind of has a character through game mechanics, and then a bunch of factions that kind of spin off of that flavor. So we're going to look at some of the pros and cons of the English, and then look at their various factions real quick, and maybe a couple leaders, and give you a taste of how the English work in Blood and Plunder.
The English spread out from their small island and they colonized the New World rather quickly, stealing most of their territory from Spain. And they brought English values with them, including their amazing seamanship, and they gave us excellent characters, such as Henry Morgan and Captain Kidd.
If English units in Blood and Plunder are one thing, it's that they are good at resolve checks and they fatigue just drops off them constantly. That's the one constant in English factions and units is that they have good resolve.
Yeah, they don't run. I think that kind of reflects the historical fact that they were colonizing and making the New World their home rather than coming just to take the money or take the furs or trade, but they were actually settling. So they don't just run away. They're protecting or not always protecting, sometimes they're attacking too, but they've made their home in the New World.
So, as far as mechanics, the English are all about generic units. They're not really specialists, so there's not as many list building variations available. But your militia have resolve 5, which is good because most militia have 6 or 7 in some cases, I believe. So your militia is going to stay put. Everything pretty much has resolve 5. They have that classic stiff upper lip. They don't run, as Conrad said earlier, but they're slightly boring because you don't have as many list building variations. Generally, almost every faction, especially when you get to the sea stuff, you're going to be bringing the same kind of units, but they are good at what they do, and they stay put.
And they have special few units that have a 4 resolve, so they can drop fatigue 70% of the time, which is very rare, unusual. Another stat that you see quite a bit in the English units is a 6 fight save. So once they get into a melee, they're hard to beat down. They don't really run. It's harder to kill them than, say, the French or something. So they're good in a melee. They don't run. All their units can do everything fairly reasonably well, but they don't have that really good sniper unit like the French, or that really good melee unit like the French, or like that really good editing unit like the French.
Yeah. They don't have a dedicated melee unit. They don't have a harassing scout unit.
Skirmish unit, yeah.
Yeah. It's all of your units, even though you'll take, all of them will have different names, are going to function as medium range musket units a lot of the time, and that can be good, but that can also lead to a little bit of boredom. I find that the English the unit variety is kind of okay because it means that you just have to paint up like one set of freebooters, and you're going to use those freebooters in lots of different English factions.
Yeah, there are some good solid units that you'll gravitate towards in several factions, which makes them a little easier than, say, the Spanish that have quite a few different ones or something.
Now let's quickly go through the different factions in this nationality. I'll start myself with the land factions. The first one is the English Caribbean Militia. This faction is a simple one that allows you to reroll one of its fatigue tests each turn, one of its failed fatigue tests each turn. And it has a number of special commanders that can be in this one, including Henry Morgan and Colonel Edward Morgan, who might die of heat stroke, and Sir Thomas Whetstone, who will let you take sea dogs and a lot of different native units as core models.
The Caribbean Militia is one of my favorite English land factions. You have a lot of different options, a couple of different force options that open up some fun possibilities.
Yeah, first of one of them is that you get the English Cavalry, which is the only cavalry in the game that has a 5 resolve
Right.
as
specialty.
as a core model, which is a lot of fun if you want to do a cavalry list. Your freebooters are also, even as an English Caribbean list, your freebooters are core. So again, you paint up those 12 freebooters, and they get to play in this faction too. Moving on the list, we have the English Expeditionary Forces, which are, in my opinion, they are not as good as the French Expeditionary Forces. Expeditionary Forces in this game, the 2 that we've have so far, what they do is you can take a support unit for every core unit. So instead of a support unit for every 2 core units. So it lets you mix and match a lot of the fun support options like cannons or pikemen. The problem with the English one is the core unit that you must take with every support unit are musketeers, which are a great unit. Musketeers have some of the best stats in the game at 6.6, 6.7, 4. And they have expertly drilled as well, but they are 6 points a model, which means if you want to spend points on, you don't end up with a lot of extra points to spend on pikemen or cannons if you're taking a bunch of units of musketeers. We also have 2 versions of the North American English militia that you can use. The first one that most people are aware of is the regular one that lets you reroll a rally test. It used to be once during the first turn, but that's being errated to once a turn. Is that right, Joseph?
Yeah, this faction appears again in the brand new Fire on the Frontier expansion, and that is getting errated, so you can just, once a turn, you can reroll a fatigue test without spending a fortune on an English unit, which makes them a little more interesting and emphasizes that focus on good resolve.
The difference between them is the North American English militia from No Peace Beyond the Line gives you militia pikemen as a core unit, whereas the one in the Fire on the Frontier does not have pikemen as a core unit. But in all ways, English pikemen aren't very good anyway, so you should just use the Fire on the Frontier version. It's has better options for support units and more another spell or another skill that makes it so all your trained militia in the force gain the elusive special rule, which makes them a little bit harder to kill. English militia are notoriously easy to kill because they have an 8 shoot save. So
that red coat, come on.
Yeah, they can't hide.
I didn't have red.
It's those bright red uniforms.
So you might as well, giving them elusive and letting them hide in cover will drop that to a 7, which, in my opinion, is just so much better, especially since you have to take them as a core unit.
Yeah. And there's a couple fun force options on that new Fire on the Frontier militia option.
Yes, there is. Like the Ranging Party, which lets you take Indian fighters and Braves as core models or core units. As long as you don't include pikemen or cavalry. I mean, not cavalry, artillery crew. And there's also the Colonial Expedition Force, which lets you include provincials as a core unit. Provincials are one of the new premier English units from Fire on the Frontier that are like a slightly downgraded musketeers. Their stat line is almost the same as musketeers, except they have a 1 worse fight save and 1 worse resolve, but they're 1 point less, and they have ball and shot, which is very cool.
Yeah, it looks like a fun unit. What else do we see in Fire on the Frontier? We're recording this like the day after it got released, so we're all excited about this.
There's also the New England Militia, which is not to be confused with the North American English Militia. These would be the New England Militia are a force where you also take English militia, but you get Indian fighters as a core unit. The way that it has been explained, because I haven't had a chance to delve into this book more, is the New England militia would predate the North American English militia because of from when they were more of a frontier colonists before the direct influence of the English crown.
Yeah, this is like Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, specifically targeting the King Philip's War.
Yeah. And the cool thing about New England militia is all the English units in it get tough because they're living the hard frontier life. So you get English militia with tough, you get Indian fighters with tough, and we've talked before, tough is a good ability. Their list is a lot like the North American English militia, except for that Indian fighters as a core unit.
Yeah, that's good. Those are good units.
Yeah, it's nice to have variety for core units because it makes it so you don't have to paint up 20 models of one type.
Yeah.
The other new addition from Fire on the Frontier is the very exciting New England Village Garrison. This is a pet faction of Joseph. It represents the smaller, unorganized defenses that some villages would have, and the main reason to play that this faction is you are always the defender. You're never on the offense.
Yeah, I think there's a fun reason to play this. It's a slightly strange faction, has a fun character, and it encourages you to use some fortifications.
Yeah, it encourages it. It forces
Required.
you to include one closed-topped fortification. That is a blockhouse. That is a stone tower fort. Stone tower fort is the most available one, or even a fortified house for the cheapest.
Or garrison house would be the most accurate one for them.
Yeah, garrison house as well. You also have to include at least one unit of the terrible, terrible civilians for every fortification you include. Other than
Civilians,
those,
a new unit in Fire on the Frontier too.
yeah, brand new unit that there's already models for too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
The core units that the New England Garrison gets are English militia, militia pikemen, and civilians, and the only support unit they get are Indian fighters. So, kind of really unique. And as you see from that list, you're going to be playing a lot of English militia. So, like what I said before, if you like playing the English, you're going to paint up a set of 8 to 16 English militia, and you're good to go on all 5 of these factions. That can be a core of every one of these.
Yep.
Now that's the mostly land factions. All of those factions that I just listed can also be played at sea. But Dan, what are the sea factions?
So the English got plenty of sea factions. They were a naval superpower at the time, so you'd expect to see quite a few. We have our English Buccaneers, standard Buccaneer fare. You get a +2 to roll to be the attacker, and you get a free mulligan of your hand without spending a fortune point once per game. Units are pretty versatile. Your classic Sea Dogs, freebooters. They are, again, your bread and butter. They're actually the first faction I started playing when I started playing Blood and Plunder, and they really rock. But in my opinion, they're kind of bland. They don't have a lot of cool special rules. The English Pirate Hunters, though, which is the next faction, are amazing. All the units get hard chargers, which makes Sea Dogs so much better. Hard chargers and brawlers are amazing when combined together, and they are really good at it as a boarding list. If you like boarding and you want to play English, this is the list for you. Then we get into the English Royal Navy, super fun as well. You get a +4 to be the attacker, and all your units, I believe, get the tough special rule, which, as we discussed, is amazing. All your Sea Dogs and militia units get the tough special rule, which means if you don't push them and they don't get any fatigue, that turn they drop a fatigue off, and it's great. And if you don't want to play, a giant Royal Navy ship, you can do a naval landing force where you can use your longboats and load them up with musketeers, which you get as core units, and do an amphibious assault. As far as units go, you only have Sea Dogs as core, but that's all you really need. This is really good if you're going to play a small kind of gun emplacement list. So if you're playing like on a brigantine or a light frigate or even a sloop, and you want to bring a good force that'll be the attacker, and you want to use cannons, all you need is Sea Dogs. And if you need more guys, just take their pistols away. Although I wouldn't recommend it unless you're really trying to cram those points in.
This is one of the best forces in the game for a cannon list. That tough with expert artillery crew everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it
it has
is.
some good commanders too. They're cheap. Their 0-point commander has broadside, which makes it really good for mid-sized games.
Very good. And then we have my favorite little faction from the Fire on the Frontier, the New England Privateers. They're like the Pirate Hunters, but they're upgraded. Same thing, all the trained and veteran units this force gain the Hard Charger special rule, +2 deterring the attacker. This is the cool part, though. If an officer, a fighting man, is included in this force, he gains a strict special rule. Not on your commander, an officer. It's really unique, and I can't wait to try this out. And then all the veteran units in the force gain the expert sailor special rule. That's really good. That's the one thing the English were sorely lacking, is a unit with expert sailors for all those pesky tacking and advanced maneuvers tests. Now you can do that. And the real appeal to this faction is that you get European sailors as a core unit, which are a really, really good musket unit as far as sailors go.
Yeah, it looks like a very solid faction.
You could have a unit of European sailors with muskets that are veterans and would have expert sailors to do some shooting and then all your advanced maneuvers if you want.
Yeah, they're great. I'm really excited for this faction. I wasn't really thrilled because to me the new book seemed like more of like a land thing, and we all know I'm not good on land. But after reading it and looking at this, I'm so excited to try these guys out. That officer with strict sounds amazing.
I can use Dutch units too from support.
Yeah, I was trying not to shine on there, but they do have my beloved Enterplogue as a support unit, which is always good. You want to chop some heads. But yeah, I love it. All the English factions are really good at sea. And like I said, that 5 resolve will really help you stay put when you need to.
Then we look at the legendary factions. There's now 3 legendary factions that have to be commanded by some of the biggest hitters from the commander roster. We have Morgan's Buccaneers, which we just did a video on Morgan. He's one of the most powerful commanders in the game, and his Buccaneer force is real fun. It's mostly a land-focused force. Not a lot of options for cheap sea units to run cannons or anything. But the special rules on that can leave your foe confounded as you keep switching and swapping your initiative card. So that can be really, really fun. And you get to use Morgan, who has a lot of good special rules. Kidd's Privateers. William Kidd is another fun commander. I don't like the force as much. You get a ship with heavily built, so you get a nice tough ship. So a nice perk in a small to mid-level game, large game too. And he just doesn't quit. If he fails a strike test, if you're about to lose the game, he can put fatigue on all his troops to continue. Which, if you lose them, you're probably losing over it. You're probably going to lose. But that's an interesting little perk. And then that unit, that force gets to use a lot of French units as well as English, which is nice because the French have the best units. And then from Fire on the Frontier, we have a 3rd legendary faction. We have a Benjamin Church model now that's coming along with this expansion, and this can be like an Indian fighters, Indian raider sort of force, and all his units, all the English units in that force gain the Ruthless trait. And we talked about the English having good resolve. So the Ruthless triggers, it gives you a bonus when you're attacking someone with more fatigue than you. So if the English already have good resolve management, fatigue management, especially like the Indian fighters, they have tough, then it's easy to get that Ruthless trigger and gain that upper hand. So This should be a real fun force that they have good resolve, they have ways to get rid of fatigue, and then they get a bonus for having less fatigue than the enemies. So,
And
that should
your
be fun.
Benjamin Church there has very inspiring as well, and 3 command points. So he'll be able to just take that fatigue off as well.
And he has mobile, which lets them scoot around with a quick rule. It should be real fun too. Which a lot of English don't have. There's not a lot of options for quick and skirmishers. They don't do a lot of tricksy things like the French or the Indians. So that's a different sort of force.
So those are the factions that English have. So let's now talk about why play the English.
2 main reasons for me is they have good resolve, so you don't have to spend a lot of time losing actions because your men are discouraged or running away. You don't have to spend as much time rallying. And the other one is they're fairly straightforward to play. There's less of a learning curve because they have more well-rounded units. If you have a unit on the board, he's not going to suck at melee. He's not going to be awesome at melee either. He's not going to be horrible at shooting. He's not going to be awesome at shooting in general. But it's hard to have a disaster with the English. You might lose, but they won't totally fold up on you like a French list going bad or a Spanish list on its any day.
Also, for me, another great way to play the English, or reason to play the English, is the Buccaneers Companion that came out 2 years ago. Is a whole campaign that is centered around one player playing the English Buccaneers. You have a bunch of new characters, you have new commanders, and a whole campaign where one player, gets to play the English. And because the campaign is from the English point of view rather than the Spanish, which that's the other side that you play against is the Spanish, the English player gets to do a lot of have a lot of fun with reoccurring characters. We've talked with Zombie Coxswain.
Yeah, they'll come back no matter how many times you kill him.
Yeah, and so that's a bonus. Is that there's if you're playing the English, there's a whole campaign dedicated to playing the English. The other thing that in addition to well-rounded characters, well-rounded units, it has well-rounded commanders that none of them do something that no one else. Well, a couple of them do something that no one else in the game does, but not very many of them. But they're all pretty good and solid. You'll see that most of them will have a way to take fatigue off of, whether that's lead by example or inspiring. So if you do have fatigue there, you can take it off. And a lot of them are just really fun and evocative to build a list around.
I should mention one other special rule that a couple English commanders have is motivated. I don't see it very often on any commanders, but the English kind of have a monopoly on it right now. Opens up some weird scenario situations. It's when you give a command point to a unit, your commander can gain a fatigue to give that unit 2 actions. So like on a race game, like Escort or something, where you're trying to get a unit across the board, you can use this unit to make that unit really scurry or do unexpected things. Kind of a fun, uniquely English special rule right now.
Yeah, it could possibly give them 5 things to do in a turn. Wow.
Yeah.
My main reason to play the English is models. You don't need a whole lot of them, and like we're mentioning, if you paint up like 12 freebooters, every time you play, you're going to play with those freebooters. So if you don't like painting like me, there's not a lot for you to paint, and when you paint up your English force, you're generally going to use all your models in every game, just about.
On a practical note, it's easy for us to relate to the English forces just because we got some culture in common, and it's also easy to read on them because there's source material in English and more readily accessible historical.
Yeah,
material.
it's a language we're speaking right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So those are some great reasons.
So I'd put the power level of the English kind of middle of the pack. They got some really good forces, some really good units like the Forlorn Hope or Standout. But I wouldn't put them at the top of the power curve, but I would put them in a really good spot for a new player getting into the game. They're pretty easy to understand and to manage, and they're pretty forgiving as far as the resolve goes. So I'd say they're solid overall and really good for new players.
They're the okayest faction.
The mediumist.
That works too.
They're the most English.
For more Blood and Plunder articles on the English, you can go over to bloodandpigment.com and check out what we have there. We have most of these factions, articles on most of these factions. You can see detailed analysis of those. We also have articles on ships and all the nations and factions, and terrain building, painting guides, battle reports, new product previews, and everything. Go check it out there.
Check out the rest of our YouTube channel as well. We'll be aiming to put out a video every Monday. Subscribe and ring the ship's bell so you can stay notified of our uploads.
And as always, keep your dice at the ready and the wind at your back. Yeah.